With all due respect, that's a bunch of malarkey. This is a bunch of stuff, deal.
What does that mean, a bunch of stuff?
Well, it means it's simply inaccurate.
It's Irish.
Exactly, it is. We Irish call it malarkey.
Thanks for the translation.
No,
Okay.
We Irish call it malarkey.
You know what this is? Yeah, and I reserve this word for those rare instances when it's truly deserved. This is malarkey.
That's a bunch of malarkey.
Direct from the King Spring Studios in beautiful Smyrna, Georgia. This is a bunch of malarkey. Now, here's your host, the incredible Charlie McMahon.
A very special thank you to legendary radio host Scott Shannon for that introduction, and thanks to all of you for tuning in to yet another episode of A Bunch of Malarkey, as the months and weeks in 2020 just seem to keep rolling on. We're in mid-May now, if you can believe that. Memorial Day weekend just a week away. 2020 almost half over. It's like, it's a blur. It was just Christmas and New Year's. I remember that. And I remember, I don't know, I didn't watch the Super Bowl. I don't remember the Super Bowl. I don't remember a lot from like February. I remember Valentine's Day. I remember a few things like that. And then all of a sudden it's May. And, you know, this lockdown, quarantine, whatever the hell you want to call it, has a lot to do with it. But where did the year go? We're almost halfway through. Seems like I just put the Christmas decorations away. But Memorial Day weekend is only a week away, if you can believe that. Probably not going to be a normal Memorial Day weekend as we all know it, but what's normal right now? Now, I used to love Memorial Day weekend. Memorial Day Friday, driving home from work on the Friday of Memorial Day was like that 3-day weekend coming up, the kickoff to summer, was my favorite day of the entire year, outside of maybe Christmas Eve. That Friday of Memorial Day weekend, going to the beach, you know, living near the beaches, spoiled, living 5-10 minutes away from the beaches. Now I can't stand summer. Since I moved to the South, I absolutely despise summer. It's already getting hot here. We've already hit high 80s. They're calling for close to 90. Too early, too much. And, you know, then we're hot until October, mid to late October. You know, has its advantages living here in the South, but overall, I don't get excited for summer anymore. My, like, Memorial Day fun Friday kickoff day is like October 1st now. I get excited for October, November, December for fire pits and hanging out outside at night, and Christmas time then and Thanksgiving. That's right in my wheelhouse now, the last 3 months of the year. I don't really enjoy summer anymore. So there's still a lot of craziness going on out there. Last week, I talked about a man who wore a Ku Klux Klan hood to a supermarket in California. Now they're saying, the police, the San Diego Sheriff's Department is saying that he's not going to face charges. This guy was photographed at the Vons in Santee, California, as I spoke about last week, with his face and his head fully covered except for the 2 holes in his eyes. And the photograph was shared by the San Diego Anti-Defamation League. You know, the Sheriff's Department says they were looking into the matter. They were deciding whether they were going to pursue criminal charges against this knucklehead. The Sheriff's Department said this week that during the interrogation with investigators, the man expressed frustration with the coronavirus and having people tell him what he can and cannot do. So that's the new excuse now. I'm frustrated over being on lockdown and being told what to do, so I'm going to act out. I'm not going to get in trouble for it. That's my excuse. Now, the San Diego County itself issued a guidance encouraging people to wear the masks when they leave their homes. The man told investigators that wearing the hood was not intended to be a racial statement. Come on. What else could it possibly be? It was a mask and it was stupid, he said, according to a news release. After a review from the U.S. Attorney's Office and the San Diego District Attorney's Office, it was determined there was insufficient evidence to charge the man who wore the KKK-style hood inside the store, the Sheriff's Department said. The man was not identified in the news release, so we're going to protect his identity on top of it all. In a statement, the supermarket chain, Vons, said employees had asked the customer to remove the hood, but the customer ignored the request until they made it to the checkout area. It was a disturbing incident for our associates and customers, and we are reviewing with our team how best to handle such inappropriate situations in the future. A statement from Vons. Local leaders and city officials expressed outrage when the incident occurred. The mayor of Santee called the incident a sad reminder of intolerance. Santee and its leaders and I will not tolerate this behavior, Minto said. The mayor, Santee, and its citizens are great, and this particular individual's actions are not representative of us as a people and a wonderful city. So basically, could you imagine if a black person went out and did something like anti-white? They would have shot him. This guy, I mean, it's unbelievable that they wouldn't charge this guy with something. So he got away with it. Now, it's the new thing with this corona, where people are just coughing and spitting on each other. That's like the new, assault. In Miami-Dade County, a bus driver named Micaiah Roll says she hasn't had a good night's sleep since a passenger intentionally spit on her. A homeless woman boarded Roll's bus and began coughing on passengers, according to a police report. Roll told her she needed to wear a mask. The woman spit on Roll and fled the bus. Miami, like many transit systems, requires passengers to wear masks during this COVID-19 pandemic. Roll, the bus driver, cleaned herself off with some Clorox wipes. I wonder where she got those. And hand sanitizer. I wonder where she got those. And she waited for police to respond and was later taken to and tested at a hospital. When she returned home, she undressed outside and threw her uniform in the garbage. Roll has yet to return to driving a bus. She said, "That's how I feed my family, but as of right now, I cannot do it." She tested negative for COVID-19. "I've never had anything like this happen to me," she said. "I'm about to lose my mind." Another Miami-Dade County Transit bus driver named Dennis Santos was charged with aggravated assault on April 29th after chasing and swinging a metal pipe at a rider who removed his mask to talk on a cell phone, according to a Monroe County Sheriff's Office police report. Across the nation, bus drivers are facing new challenges as they try to protect passengers and themselves from a virus that's killed 135 transit workers across the nation, according to reports from the largest transit union, the Transit Union and the Transport Workers Union. Leaders of the Transit Union say protections for bus drivers are lacking. They want high-quality masks available more widely and drivers to get help with new duties, such as enforcing these mask requirements and making sure buses aren't crowded. Some transit systems have put a cap on the number of people or passengers to promote social distancing. In Milwaukee, buses are restricted to only 10 passengers. King County Metro, which operates in Seattle, is generally limiting capacity to 12 riders on 40-foot buses and 18 riders on 60-foot buses. Bus drivers face more risk than colleagues who operate trains or maintenance workers because they're in close contact with the passengers. Many have no physical barrier between themselves and the passengers. Some jurisdictions have tried temporary measures such as hanging shower curtains. Bus drivers still must touch wheelchairs to help those riders on board exit and secure their wheelchairs when they board. So feel bad for these transit workers. 135 of them have passed away across the country due to this coronavirus. So talked about, remember last week, the hits keep on coming. It's the same thing this week. Listen to this one. I just don't get the connection here, but listen to this. Authorities arrested a Connecticut man after he allegedly committed a series of crimes after being kicked out of McDonald's for not wearing a mask. The suspect reportedly broke a window at the fast food joint and then stole several pairs of women's underwear at a nearby store. Authorities took Jason DeDario into custody after the incident at a McDonald's in Brooklyn, Connecticut. According to reports, he had been kicked out of the restaurant for refusing to wear a mask despite a statewide order. After leaving the restaurant, he reportedly broke one of its windows with a rock. Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont had previously issued an executive order that face masks must be worn while in public as a part of the state's efforts to slow the spread of coronavirus. Daddario eventually agreed to leave the restaurant, but then he threw a large rock at one of the restaurant's windows. The suspect then allegedly fled to a nearby Walmart where he stole several pairs of women's underwear. According to the news, authorities and a police dog took Daddario into custody as he exited the Walmart. He reportedly attempted to flee but surrendered before the authorities released the dog on him. He's facing charges of criminal mischief and breach of peace. I don't get the connection between not being happy about having to wear a mask at McDonald's and stealing women's underwear. I don't see the connection there, but apparently there is one. But wait, there's more. Go to Kingsport, Tennessee, where two men were arrested after flipping tables at an Applebee's restaurant when the bar manager announced last call for alcohol. According to reports from the Kingsport Police Department, Derringer Barton, he's 23, and Blakely Marsh, 21, of Mount Carmel were arrested Saturday night in the parking lot of the Applebee's on East Stone Drive. Reports say officers arrived at the restaurant about 10:45 p.m. after receiving calls about customers flipping tables. When officers pulled into the parking lot, they saw a man, later identified as Marsh, getting in a black pickup truck and employees chasing him and pointing at the truck. Officers pulled over the truck outside the restaurant and spoke with Barton, who was driving. The report says Barton was asked to get out of the truck and appeared to be unsteady on his feet and had bloodshot eyes and a slurred speech. Barton allegedly told officers he drank 3 beers and he was attempting to drive across the road to another parking lot. Officers report that Barton said he did not think he was sober enough to drive, and he performed poorly on his field sobriety test. Barton was placed under arrest for driving under the influence. Marsh was placed under arrest for public intoxication. The report says the bar manager told officers that Barton and Marsh had become irate when last call for alcohol was announced, and the two began flipping tables in the restaurant. The bar manager said there was no real property damage despite the tables being flipped. So a little brawl over booze in a restaurant and a brawl over booze out in the street where 3 men I love these bizarre stories to kick off the show. 3 men were arrested after a brawl broke out with cops in Brooklyn, New York, when one of the men refused to hand over a bottle of booze, police said. The violent video, which was posted on Instagram, shows at least 6 officers struggling to arrest 2 men as they exchange blows in Brownsville section of Brooklyn on Sunday. Cops said the melee erupted after 8 p.m. near Briston Street. This is on Mother's Day, this shit's going down, and Livonia Avenue, where officers approached a group of men, including 39-year-old Jerry Akbar, who was allegedly smoking marijuana and drinking. Officers were going to cut Akbar a break and let him go without a summons, but the man became combative and belligerent when he was asked to hand over his bottle of booze. As officers tried to collar Akbar, another man, 44-year-old Sam Moore, jumped into the fight, spitting on a cop and kicking another in the stomach. The video starts as officers are struggling with Moore on the sidewalk near a fence. Akbar was wearing a white sweatshirt and a hat. He can be seen in the video grappling with officers near a car as he lands a number of punches in the violent scuffle, to which at least one officer responds in kind. Akbar, who was also allegedly carrying a pocket knife, was charged with 2 counts of felony assault and criminal possession of a weapon, as well as 4 charges for drinking and smoking weed in public. Moore was slapped with 2 counts of felony assault and aggravated harassment. A third man, 30-year-old Adrian Haynes, who is not in the video, was also charged with obstructing the arrests. Police Commissioner Dermot Shea criticized the men involved in the ugly street brawl. This is not what should happen. We need compliance both ways. It's not the end of the world. If you're going to receive a summons, it should not be escalating into fights with police officers. So, I mean, fights over booze. Now, remember when a few weeks ago when the corona just broke out? Like, there weren't a lot of mutant stories. It was mostly about people coughing on produce. Now all the mutants are coming out again, so we're going to be chock full of them. Now, you may be working from home. It's a different world now. We're doing these Zoom meetings and Google meetings. Everything's on either video or audio, calls, audio. Well, do you ever forget to mute the phone when you are talking to your spouse or head to the bathroom or do something? Well, a Supreme Court justice flushed the toilet and forgot to mute. The Supreme Court was making history Wednesday afternoon, holding arguments over the phone because of COVID-19, when all of a sudden there was a distinct sound of a toilet flushing. Across the country, the public that has never before this week been able to listen in real time to oral arguments held remotely was treated to not only deep questions related to the First Amendment and robocalls, but also to someone's apparent bathroom break. The errant flush from an unknown source comes as the justices, lawyers, and the country are dealing with new realities and hazards of conducting their business over teleconference lines. The case at issue concerned the Telephone Consumer Protection Act that prohibits unwanted calls to cell phones by use of automated systems. Challengers say one provision violates the Constitution. So, calls to the Supreme Court by the News and the Justice Department were not immediately returned. They were really going to call to ask who flushed the toilet. That's news you just have to know, right? So I saw a video, and I think I posted it to the Bunch of Malarkey Facebook page, about the woman who was on like a teleconference call from work, and the husband comes walking in the room in his underwear to ask a question and then freezes like a deer in the headlights, realizing that his wife is like live on a teleconference, tries to do an about face, crashes into a wall. The wife is totally mortified and humiliated. And my wife tells me all the time, I'm going to be on a call because I yell shit out all day. I curse. I yell motherfucker all day when something doesn't go right, or cocksucker, or, you know. So she has to tell me beforehand, I'm going to be on a call. I'll let you know when I'm off. Shut up. Because I just yell obscenities all day. Now, who likes the band Queen? You know, We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions, Crazy Little Thing Called Love, Another One Bites the Dust. Well, this is a bizarre story. Queen guitarist Brian May has revealed he ended up in a hospital after injuring his buttocks during an incident in his garden. I don't even want to know. He said, I managed to rip my gluteus maximus to shreds in a moment of over-enthusiastic gardening, he said in an Instagram post. So suddenly I find myself in a hospital getting scanned to find out exactly how much I've actually damaged myself. May, usually very active on Instagram, had not posted anything for several days until Thursday. He updated followers to let them know his absence was not due to coronavirus, before saying that he had been quiet due to too many demands, as well as his buttocks injury. I like that word, buttocks. Buttocks. While May did not reveal how he injured himself, he appears to have done significant damage to his buttocks. Turns out, I did a thorough job, he said. This is a couple of days ago, and I won't be able to walk for a while or sleep without a lot of assistance because the pain is relentless, he wrote, adding that he would be off social media for a while to get some rest. Please, please, please don't send me sympathy. I just need some healing silence for a while, he said before saying farewell to his fans and telling them to take care out there. Last month, May released a new version of the iconic Queen song, We Are the Champions, in support of workers on the front lines of the coronavirus. May, Roger Taylor, and Adam Lambert teamed up to release You Are the Champions, a new version of the classic songs, where all proceeds made from the song will go towards the COVID-19 Solidarity Response Fund for the World Health Organization. Queen and Lambert, who now sings in place of deceased frontman Freddie Mercury, were scheduled to be on the European leg of their Rhapsody tour, but the ongoing pandemic led the musicians to postpone the date. So, in case you were wondering how Brian May's buttocks is, there is your update. So, a little update on Brian May, some mutants, but not the crown jewel of mutants. Let's segue right into our favorite segment.
A bunch of malarkey. Mutant of the Week.
Now here's Charlie.
So last week we had a pretty good battle. We have the Dollar Tree dickhead, the man who was confronted by a Dollar Tree employee and asked to put on a mask, and he said, "I got your mask right here," and wiped his nose on her shirt. He went up against my Kentucky hole, the woman in Kentucky who cut a hole in her face mask because she could breathe better. It was close, 57-43. Dollar Tree dickhead is our Mutant of the Week. So thank you all for voting. Where do you vote for the Mutant of the Week? Well, the poll goes up every Monday, ends early on Saturday. You have 5.5 days to vote. Make your voices heard. Please tell your friends, family, and coworkers about A Bunch of Malarkey and the poll. You can share the poll. When you vote, just go to the bottom right of the post and hit the share button. The more votes, the merrier, right? A bigger cross-section of the population. Mutant number 1, our first nominee of this week. Got to go out to California, where a Roseville man was arrested after a bizarre home invasion. Police say 28-year-old James Nunley II, he is suspected of sneaking into a family's home and bathing himself before being discovered and later arrested. Although police are not releasing exactly which neighborhood it happened in, the Placer County Sheriff's Office says the incident took place early on Wednesday morning. At the time, the victims, a family, were putting their child to sleep. That's when deputies believe Nunley entered the home through an unlocked door. Nunley then hid in the home for a little bit of time, and according to deputies, he used the family's bathroom to take a bath. Later, as he left that bathroom, he was caught by one of the victims and he ran out of the house. But a short time later, he was caught by deputies and arrested for burglary and booked at the South Placer County Jail on $110,000 bail. However, the sheriff's office says Nunley was later found to be on probation out of Placer County, meaning he's now ineligible for bail. So let's call him the bathing burglar. Guy who felt he needed a bath. It's bad enough you're trying to avoid these people with corona. Now they're coming into your house and using your bathroom. Mutant number 2 nominee, go out to Texas, where a Texas man who allegedly threw a steak and a bag of lettuce at a supermarket cashier on Sunday morning has been identified by the Leander Police Department. According to the police, the man became upset with the grocery store employee when he was told about the store's meat purchasing limits. There's a little bit of a meat shortage out there, in case you don't know, and some stores are limiting you. The man was seen on the surveillance video throwing an individually packaged steak and a bag of lettuce at the cashier. Surveillance footage from the store was able to capture the suspect walking out of the store about 7:30 a.m. on Sunday. The parking lot video shows the man driving away in a white Ford Fusion. On April 30th, the grocery store chain placed limits, this is Heb, the grocery store, on meat purchases due to growing concerns around the nation's raw meat supply chain. Coronavirus outbreaks have been reported at meat processing plants across the country, which have contributed to the supply chain issue. So let's call him the steak slinger. So we got the steak slinger out of Texas, the bathing burglar out of California. So make your voices heard. Poll goes up on Monday. I'm used to saying Tuesday, but we've been doing it on Monday for the last couple of months. So Monday through Saturday, make your voices heard as usual. Now, a lot of talk about death on television. You know, almost 88,000 at this point, at the point where I'm taping this podcast, Americans have died due to coronavirus. It's sad. And you may or may not know someone who has been affected by this. And if you do, my apologies and my condolences to you. But we also see another kind of death in the news every day, death of celebrities. Now, some people take the death of a celebrity very personally and they get very upset. And other people criticize those people for mourning celebrities. Now, raise your hand. I can't see you, but raise your hand if a celebrity death hit you harder than you expected. Now, I obviously can't see you. You can't see me, but I assure you my hand was raised. I've been thinking about celebrity deaths because they're so frequent in the news, at least once a week, and the grief that accompanies some of them. I mean, let's be honest. even if I said Michael Jackson's death hadn't impacted you, you could probably think of another celebrity death that hit you harder than you imagined, based on our connection with that celebrity. I mean, I can remember exactly where I was when I found out that Tom Petty died. I had a moment of collective grief at work when someone told me that Prince died. But I know as well as the next person that it's easy to feel a little self-conscious when you find yourself experiencing grief around the death of a stranger. The feelings creep up on you and you are saying to yourself, why am I so upset about this? I didn't even know this person. The sadness, it doesn't just feel abstract. It can be very personal, and that feels kind of weird. You know, as usual, I'm here to answer that nagging question that comes up too often. Am I crazy? I mean, we know the answer to that. I don't think so. Not on this. Feeling intense emotions around celebrity deaths is a common experience. And when we are already grieving, it can be even more deeply intensified. What's this celebrity grief all about, and why does it happen? Like so many things in grief, there are lots of reasons and no clear rules. Some people feel intense emotions around a celebrity death, and others feel absolutely nothing. The reasons for those emotions may vary dramatically, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Here are some things to keep in mind when we're talking about celebrity deaths. Now, we don't know these celebrities, but we know them. That makes sense? They have often been a regular part of our lives in the shows and the movies and the music we love, creating that art that defines moments in our lives, creating art and writing and music and all that stuff that we love so much. We often see them grow and change, and in some cases have felt connected to those changes. Celebrities sometimes feel like our friends, the role of parasocial bonds. The one reason we feel sad when bad things happen to celebrities is because they feel like our friends. Now, people form these parasocial bonds with celebrities. Parasocial bonds are one-way relationships with celebrities. Many people feel strongly connected to a movie, to television stars, to musicians, news broadcasters, meteorologists, and others, even though there's no true interaction that occurs. But believe it or not, parasocial bonds are actually pretty normal. Many of us have them, even though we know logically that celebrities are not really our friends because we see them so often and have so much access to information about them. They sometimes feel like our friends. That can be handy when they accomplish great things and we can feel proud of them and connected to them. But it also means that when they get sick or pass away, we grieve them as much like we would a real friend. We feel connected to our favorite celebrities because these connections are not just about how much we love, appreciate, and respect these people, but sometimes they remind us of ourselves. This could be as specific as their connection to a moment in our past, or as general as the fact that they are about our age or have something else in common to us. Now, they are connected to friends or family who have died. Maybe your mom loved a certain singer and it reminds you of your mom. That's how you feel connected with that singer. It's a big one. We've heard, you hear from so many people on the news when a celebrity dies that, maybe they didn't personally know David Bowie, but their mother, their father, their spouse, or their child or other family member who died was a fan. Each time we lose something else connected to our loved one, we can experience the sensation that we are even further from our loved one that we lost. Now, sometimes we connect with the way the celebrity died, whether it's cancer, a suicide, an overdose, an accident, or any other type of death. This can hit a nerve with us. It may be because we have struggled with the same thing, or it may be because we lost someone in the same fashion. Celebrities dying reminds us of our own mortality. Now, when something pushes our own mortality into our minds, it can be unpleasant. When celebrities die or are diagnosed with life-threatening illnesses, it's a scary reminder to us of our own aging and our own death at some point. Seeing an idol passing away can make death seem even more likely for ourselves. Now, celebrities dying reminds us of the fact that even special people die. Everybody dies. We may also react to the deaths of celebrities because they challenge our self-serving biases. A great deal of research in psychology suggests that most people desperately want to believe that the world is safe and predictable. That desire leads us to develop inaccurate views of the world so we can feel better about our lives. For example, people think they are much less likely than other people to get an awful disease, but much more likely to live a long life. We all think that. It's not going to happen to me, right? In other words, the death or illness of a celebrity makes us realize that these awful things can happen to, if they can happen to a famous person, then we are at risk too. Celebrity deaths shake us up because they threaten the self-serving illusions that help us make ourselves feel secure. We may mourn celebrities because doing so can signal to others that we are committed to a particular group, cause, or identity. And we want to feel like we're devoted members of like the gang or the tribe who knew and admired that specific celebrity's cultural contributions or art or music or whatever. So we communicate through this group or membership. Publicly mourning the death of a celebrity allows us to connect with a large group of other people, at least temporarily. When people mourn Luke Perry, for example, they are showing that they are someone who was into 90s culture, Beverly Hills 90210, thereby connecting them to all the other people who feel the same way. Even years after some celebrities died, people may still signal their grief as fans of Elvis Presley continue to mourn more than 40 years after his death. We also feel that celebrity was always there to comfort us. Maybe it was the binge watching of The Sopranos that got you through the early days of your own grief, or perhaps it was listening to a certain band that got you through a particularly painful time. Whatever it was, when a celebrity dies who brought us comfort in our difficult times, it can be especially painful and bring up past losses. Now, we see it everywhere. You turn on the TV, you listen to the radio, you log into social media, we look at Google, we look at the news, you just can't avoid it. This constant exposure can be overwhelming, and it can make it hard to get a break from the tough emotions. So when a celebrity dies, you're seeing it everywhere. So that may be a contributing factor to your grief also. Here's a big one. It represents losing our past or our youth. You know, this is an interesting viewpoint. It's a very real impact of celebrity death. Probably it becomes more and more intensified as more and more celebrities of a generation pass away. Celebrities are ties to our youth, the role of nostalgia. We don't have to have a parasocial bond with a celebrity to feel sad when they die. We might feel grief because of nostalgia. Through nostalgic reflection, these people become part of who we are. So when they pass away, we can feel like we lost a part of ourselves. Even people who didn't feel a parasocial bond with, again, like Luke Perry, may have mourned when he died because they watched 90210 when they were younger. Because Perry was part of that show, some people felt as if they lost a link to their younger selves when he passed away. You know, other people make us feel bad when we mourn the celebrity deaths because when people don't validate our feelings, it just leaves us feeling worse, like we can't be honest and we don't have support. If someone has made you feel like your grief around a celebrity's death was irrational or crazy, you may have found yourself hesitating to talk about it with others in the future. What's also sad is that when a favorite celebrity passes away, we come to the realization that they will never do or create anything new. One minimizing thing people say when an artist, actor, or musician dies is at least the world still has all their work. This is true, and these works of art, musical, or political action live on. Doesn't mean that they're not forgotten about. But we will never hear a new song, read a new book, a poem, see them in a film, or go to another live performance. You feel grateful for the works that exist while grieving the loss of their potential future works. I mean, John Lennon, for instance, 40 years old, cut down in the prime of his life, and you wonder what he would have accomplished. It's going to be 40 years since he passed this December, so he's been gone now as long as he was here, so you wonder what he would have accomplished in these last 40 years. Now let's put it all together. Why do people mourn celebrities? It turns out there are many reasons. People mourn because they feel a parasocial connection with the celebrities, so their death feels like the loss of a friend. Their death severs a link to our youth. Their death makes us more aware of our own mortality. The passing of famous people makes us realize that we are not special enough to escape illness and death. Celebrity deaths make us feel every from our youth is dying, and mourning celebrity deaths allows us to signal to others that we are a part of a certain group or have certain values. Now, let's go over some of the most significant celebrity deaths of my lifetime and the ones that have affected me the most. No particular order. Elvis, I was 6 years old. I remember it coming on the news and my parents being like, oh my God, Elvis died. I can remember that. Didn't realize how significant he was to music at that age. Looking back now, obviously. Same thing for John Lennon. I was 9. I remember it all over the news, especially living in New York. I remember the day or two after he passed, all the New York radio stations put on Imagine, his song Imagine at the same time. People would drive it around with their headlights on during the day. It was a very strange time. His songs were being played nonstop on the radio. Now, I kind of knew who John Lennon was when I was 9. I didn't realize the significance of John Lennon till I was much older. And looking back, it's like that was a really big deal. Michael Jackson, everybody can remember where they were when Michael Jackson passed. I was shocked. Didn't expect Michael Jackson, although he had a lot of other issues that I'm not going to get into. But I was very shocked when Michael Jackson passed away in 2009. Prince, I was very shocked. I was at work, found out from a customer when I was working at the parking lot. Totally shocked over Prince. Didn't see that coming. George Michael, the same thing. Christmas Day, forget what year, 2015, 16, one of those years. Christmas Day, had a nice Christmas, put on the news. We were watching the evening news. That popped on, breaking news. George Michael is dead. And I'm like, George Michael's dead? Are you kidding me? Same thing with David Bowie. We kind of knew he was sick. We didn't know the extent of it. Very shocking. Robin Williams, again, knew he had depression, knew he had some issues. Didn't see that coming. Really shocking, Whitney Houston. When I found out Whitney Houston passed away. Now, again, we talked about having a link to a generation. Michael Jackson, Prince, George Michael, Whitney Houston. It's the 80s. It's when I grew up. All these artists that passed away in a short span of time. You feel like you're losing your whole connection to your childhood. Whitney Houston was shocking. Now, we all knew she had drug issues, but totally shocking. Never saw that coming. Obviously, Kobe Bryant a couple of months ago. Luke Perry, I think he had a major heart attack or something, and that was pretty shocking. Kurt Cobain, I remember where I was when I heard he passed away back in, I think it was 94. Pretty shocking. Wasn't a big fan of Nirvana at that point, but realized within a few months how significant he was to the music industry. One from when I was a kid, looking back on it now, how significant was this? The captain of the New York Yankees, Thurman Munson, the catcher, huge player in Yankees history, dies in the prime of his career in the middle of a season in a plane crash. I remember I was 8 years old. I was in my room. My dad comes in. I was kind of just starting to get into baseball. My dad said, Thurman Munson died. And I looked at my dad. He goes, that's the catcher for the Yankees. And I said, okay. And I went back to playing with my cars. But how significant is that? I mean, we just saw Kobe Bryant pass. He was retired, tragically died. A baseball player or a sports figure of that magnitude, imagine passing while they're still playing. And that was the case with Thurman Munson on August 2nd of 79. And I remember it well as a kid, all the headlines for the newspapers. Very shocking. Harry Chapin, another one, singer, died in a car accident on Long Island, I think 1980, 81. Pretty big news in New York. I remember that pretty well when I was a kid. Bernie Mac, the comedian, that was pretty shocking. Didn't see that one coming. One I would have to say that has affected me the most. Now you're going to say, that's weird. I put him in a class of musicians with my favorites. My favorites are Bruce Springsteen, Billy Joel, Tom Petty, Jackson Brown, those singer-songwriter types. When Glenn Frey passed in 2016, I remember exactly where I was. I'm still stunned. I am still stunned. I did not see that coming. I just love Glenn Frey's music and his work with the Eagles, his solo work. Love Glenn Frey. And I'm still stunned over it. Didn't see it coming. Very shocking. Just a really big loss. I would say that celebrity death probably affected me the most is Glenn Frey. Because I still, from time to time, I'll play his music and I'll think, like, Glenn is gone. Very, very crazy. I guess Tupac Shakur and Notorious B.I.G., you knew they were involved in that whole war, East Coast, West Coast, but you don't anticipate two guys in their 20s in the primes of their careers to be killed a year apart. So Tupac and Biggie, very, very big to the music world. Very shocking. The crocodile hunter, Steve Irwin, who saw that coming? We all knew where we were when we heard that. Aaliyah, the singer Aaliyah, back in, I think it was 2001, young girl, early 20s. Again, prime of her career, had so much left, dies in a plane crash. Same you could say for Lisa Left Eye Lopez of TLC. I think she died in a car accident. Another one that was very young, had a lot of creativity ahead of her, in her 20s, maybe early 30s, I don't know the exact age. Chris Farley, funny guy. I mean, his movies, Saturday Night Live, just an absolute comedy genius. Just taken from us. I mean, how much more did he have left? How many more movies, TV shows, whatever, for Chris Farley? And John Candy. I would say next to Glenn Fry, John Candy's right up there. I remember I was driving my car with a girlfriend at the time on the Southern State Parkway in New York, and it came over the radio that John Candy had passed away. And I just loved his movies. Such a funny guy, and that was pretty shocking. James Gandolfini of The Sopranos. I can't tell you how many times I've watched that entire series over and over and over again. Now, who's more... I mean, when you think of actors or actresses that will be remembered for one role, they will always, no matter what else they did, they will be remembered for that. And I can think of two that are etched in history as far as acting. You have Henry Winkler, who will always be the Fonz, no matter what he does. And James Gandolfini will always be Tony Soprano. And those two... I mean, I can't really think of two other actors or actresses that are so recognized by those two roles. And I just love The Sopranos. And, again, I probably watched the full series, I would have to say 20 times, every episode. Very shocked when I heard that James Gandolfini passed away. One of my favorite bands of all time, Steely Dan. I don't think there's a day that goes by in my house that I don't play a Steely Dan song. Walter Becker and Donald Fagen, the two founding members of the band. Walter Becker died a couple of years ago. Didn't see that coming. Didn't know he was sick. And just came across the news. I think I was scrolling through Facebook and I was stunned over that. That probably ranks in the top 5 of celebrity deaths that shocked me, is Walter Becker. Amy Winehouse. I had just moved into... I was just setting up this house here in Smyrna. We had just bought the house. We were moving from New York. And my wife had went back to New York, and I was here alone, and I was setting up the house. The movers were coming, and I was doing all kinds of stuff. And I remember that coming across the television. Not very surprised. Surprised at her age, but not very surprised because of the problems that she had. But still, such a waste of a talent. Princess Diana, I mean, everybody was shocked over that. Got up on a Sunday morning. Princess Diana had died the night before. I remember the day very well because it was August 31st. That was the day I was going to Yankee Stadium because they were retiring the number of my favorite Yankees player of all time, Don Mattingly. And I remember getting up that morning to go to the baseball game and the retirement ceremony, and that coming across the news. And they had a moment of silence at Yankee Stadium that day for her. It was pretty strange. Another woman who was very young and just totally unexpected. Heather O'Rourke, the girl who played Carol Ann in Poltergeist, died, a little girl, from intestinal problems and infection and all that. Well, just a horrible, shocking death of a little girl like that. That stayed with me for a while. Bob Marley, only in his mid-30s. So much music he put out. Only 36 years. Imagine what he would have done if he had lived longer. Got cancer, died in 1981, May of 81. I think the anniversary of his death was just the other day, on the 11th of May, if I'm not mistaken. So he's been gone almost 40 years as well. And the music that man put out, you just wonder what else he had left. Selena, not a fan, don't know much about her, know a couple of songs, but another artist in the prime of her career. And 3 others that really affected me. The band Boston means a lot to me. My favorite album of all time is Boston's debut album. Their lead singer, Brad Delp, one of the most unique voices in rock and roll history. Committed suicide in 2007 in March, somewhere around St. Patrick's Day. I'm going to say like a week before St. Patrick's Day. And finding out about that was very devastating. I think I was out on St. Patrick's Day when someone told me he had passed away. And I was like, it ruined my whole St. Patrick's Day and whole night out. And it stayed with me for a while. 2012, we lost a lot of great singers from my generation. One of the most memorable singers of my generation, I grew up listening to her music, was the first album we ever owned was Donna Summer on the Radio. When Donna Summer passed in 2012, it stayed with me for a while as well. You talk about a link to your youth. My sister and brother and I used to play her music all the time, and we grew up a soundtrack to a childhood. And the same thing goes for Robin and Maurice Gibb of the Bee Gees, too. You know, the Bee Gees, if I was to pick a group that defines my childhood, yeah, I love 80s music. I run an 80s radio station, as you all know. But if you said pick a group that is the soundtrack of your childhood, it's the Bee Gees. You're talking about those defining years from 76 to 80, when I was 4 through 9. All you heard on the radio was the Bee Gees, the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, and they had so many great songs before and after that. The Bee Gees were it. They were the soundtrack to my childhood. Donna Summer, a close second to the Bee Gees. So that's why those guys' deaths hit me so hard. You know, the oldest Bee Gee is the only one left, Barry. Andy died a very young man, even before the two brothers, and then each of the two twins, Maurice and Robin, died over the years. But the Bee Gees, when I think of the soundtrack, if I was to make a movie and put the soundtrack to my childhood, pre-MTV, pre-80s, it's the Bee Gees. I mean, I can't think of my childhood without thinking of a Bee Gees song playing in the background, because that was on all the time. No matter where you went for a number of years, they had hit after hit after hit, year after year after year. And that's what we talked about, that connection to your childhood when someone passes away that you connect to, that made an impact or just reminds you of your childhood. It's really tough. So don't be knocking people who mourn celebrity deaths. Now, if you take bereavement time from work and don't come out of the house for a couple of weeks, yeah, that might be a little bit of a problem. But if someone's really affected and, maybe my therapy, like when Glenn Frey died, play his music for a straight week, really delve into the deeper stuff that, wasn't very popular, try to learn new songs that maybe I didn't know that he had. Same thing with Steely Dan. That's usually my tribute. When someone passes away, especially in the music world, I will play their music for a couple of weeks straight and remember them that way. But I don't cower in a corner crying or anything like that. But I've teared up for a couple. But I think it's normal. I think it's normal because we have that connection. We don't have to know them personally for an artist. I mean, Bruce Springsteen, when he passes, I may need a little bereavement time. Billy Joel, it's going to be tough because the connection you have, not only with, not the celebrity. I don't have the connection with the celebrity. I can't relate to millionaires, but I can relate to the songs Bruce Springsteen wrote. Sometimes it feels like they're writing about you because you can relate to those songs on so many levels. So that's why it hurts so much. So that's my spiel. We're schmoozing a little bit about celebrity death. So don't feel ashamed. I'd love to hear about the celebrity death that affected you the most. So please post it when I post the show. Let me know what celebrity death affected you the most. Now, where is A Bunch of Malarkey found? We're found on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Radio Public, Radio.com, Stitcher, CastBox, YouTube, Deezer, Pocket Cast, Breaker, Overcast. And if you have an Amazon Echo device, just say, Alexa, play the podcast, A Bunch of Malarkey. Now, how do you get in touch with us? A Bunch of Malarkey podshow at gmail.com. You can call us 706-406-8212. You can just go to our Facebook page, send me a private message. I will answer you back. I'm not that much of a... I'm just a low guy on the pole here doing a rinky-dink podcast, so I'm not that uppity where I'm not going to answer you back. So you can always message me through our Facebook page. Now, if you want to be a patron of the show, we have several. Go to patreon.com, patreon.com/abunchofmalarkey. You can make a one-time donation. You can sponsor the show, $1 a month. Come on, $1 a month, $2 a month, $3 a month, whatever you can afford. Support the show. It helps offset some of the cost of the show. Have to pay hosting fees, printing fees, supplies, all kinds of stuff for the show. So that helps out. I appreciate the ones who have signed up. My book is still out there. It's still selling, believe it or not. If you want something funny to read poolside or at the beach when you're allowed to go, a whole lot of shenanigans. You can find that on Amazon. Free 2-day shipping with Prime membership. A whole lot of shenanigans over on Amazon Prime. Next week is Memorial Day weekend. We always take that weekend off, so there is no show next week. We will be back on, I wrote this down here, May 31st. So no show next week on the 24th, but we'll be back on the 31st. So we'll be celebrating Memorial Day, and I'll be working on the radio that weekend. So I'm not going to have any time off. I'm just not going to be doing this. But we always take Memorial Day off. So enjoy the Memorial Day weekend. We'll be back on the 31st. So I was saying, if you miss my voice for the next 2 weeks, please go to Charlie's 80s Attic on TuneIn or iHeartRadio. I'm going to be there. I'm there all the time. I'm there live most days from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. You can hear me over there. Charlie's 80s Attic. You can go to charlies80sattic.com if you want to check out the website, and you can also play the station from there. You can stream it from there. So definitely check out the radio. If you like music, you're an 80s fan, you're tired of hearing the same songs played over and over again, check out Charlie's 80s Attic. Every song on the station was handpicked by me. Rejected a lot of songs. Very deep rotation on the station. So you're not going to get the same crap played over and over again. So if you need an 80s music fix, check me out over at Charlie's 80s Attic on iHeartRadio and TuneIn Radio. So folks, if you're sitting around the house still wondering when the hell you're going to get out, what you're doing for Memorial Day weekend, while you're grieving a celebrity death, you still have to beware, because it's a shit show out there. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. It really means a lot to me. Take care of yourselves. Be safe if you do get out on Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy it. We'll be back the week after on May 31st. Take care, everybody.